welcome back to my channel. I'm Emerald the Quilter, and happy Hispanic Heritage Month. It is September 22nd, 2024, and today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm going to show you 10 ways to decorate your home with quilts. So let's get started. So let's dive in right into the first choice. And as quilters, we may be most familiar with this form of decorating our home with quilts, and that is with quilt ladders. I have two on either side of the china, and in this room, it is the largest room, center of the home, and I display my favorite quilts on these two ladders, and I have two of them so that I have a symmetrical look and feel in the home. They are made of wood, and these I purchased at H-E-B in the home section, and they're quite sturdy. They have 5 sections, and because they're leaning up with all that weight on the wall, they don't fall down. And even with my little one, he knows to stay away and be safe around these. Not that he's ever had any issues, but quilt ladders are definitely the way to go because they can fill up a good amount of your wall space. So there's the first way. And now let's move on to the next. Another way to decorate your home with quilts is taking those smaller quilts that maybe they're not necessarily baby quilts, they are most likely going to be art quilt size, and they're definitely not even a small lap size, unless it was for a little one. But you just take those, and with pins, you directly just pin them into the wall so that they're flush. And the more pins that you add, the flatter the edges of the quilt are to the wall. And so it just has a nice look to it. I add more pins to the top because, and you can kind of see where it's like pushed in there above the chicken's head. And I like to do that because the top of the quilt is really what's supporting most of the weight. So if you do display your quilts on the walls, make sure that they are a smaller size and you have enough pins to hang them up. And now we're in the family room. This is where my son and I read books together and watch Hot Wheels over and over and over again. And it's just a cozy place, and I've filled it with as much quilts as possible. There's quite a few different ways in here to use your quilts as home decor. So we're gonna start with the right corner of the living room, and although you may think like, hey, that's kind of like a ladder, this has some significance to my family and I. This is actually a towel rack. It's made of wood. I've drilled it into the wall, and that that towel rack was the upstairs towel rack in the bathroom that my siblings and I used in our very first house growing up. So when my parents purchased their first house, that towel rack was the one that we used to hang our wet towels over. And so when that home sold, I had my dad unscrew it from the wall, and I've been taking it with me ever since. So that's just a beautiful memory to have, and now instead of using it to hang towels, I hang quilts on it. And I've got that space up there left because I have a quilt that I intend to hang just on the top. So that is just waiting. And over here, we've got the recliner, and that's my dad's recliner that he loves to take naps in. So I drape the quilt over that so that we can see its picture. And I want to just move this pillow, and I can't get my camera over, so let me just walk around so that you can see the image. There it is. They're like Halloween fall style trees, and I got this quilt pattern out of, I think it was Quilts and More magazine. It might have been that or a sister magazine, but it was years ago, and so I love that quilt. And I also have a quilt on my recliner right there, along with my little table to eat snacks on. So draping your quilts, especially when you can keep them open all the way in that same fashion, just helps you enjoy the entire surface of the quilt. So another way to decorate your home with quilts is any console or even a table can be used to showcase your quilts. This particular quilt I brought out because it's the same fabric line, even though it's not from the same pattern designer, but it's just screaming fall. And I think even today is the last day of summer, so we're going into fall. It's pumpkin spice latte season for me, and I just love that. And it really, even the quilted pillows over here on my son's beanbag, it just really makes this room cozy. So if this is the kind of feel that you're going for, you can decorate your room with quilts on the walls, on the sofas, and on your tabletops. Next on our list, we have curtain rods. Curtain rods are the perfect way to display an entire quilt, especially if it is a larger quilt that you don't want anybody to be using as a blanket type of thing. And I use my curtain rods now differently than I used to a few months ago. When we zoom in on the edges of the rods, you can see that instead of using the little loop-de-loop, I have only a screw. So there it is zoomed in. I have one screw just maybe half an inch higher than the other, because when you look really close, whoops, there we go. The rod on one half is less wide than the rod on the other half, because both rods work together and one slides into the other. So when you're hanging your rods for quilts in this fashion, you have to keep that in mind. And you can see that this side over here on the left, the diameter of that rod is thicker. So about a half an inch ought to do it, depending on the thickness of the poles for your rod. And I placed this one smack in the middle of the hallway, because this is the quilt that I won a blue ribbon on, and so I just want to display it, and it's just right in the middle of the home. So very pleased with that one. And if you have lots of wall space like I do, you can hang more than one up. So here's the other, and I've kind of been freaking out. Side story here, I've been freaking out because I have not worked on my other quilt that I intend to enter into the quilt show for January, called the Joy of Quilts show with the Quilt Guild of Greater Houston. And then one of my friends was like, enter this one. And I'm like, I can't. I'm like, wait, hold on, can I? And I went back through my Instagram pictures, and I finished the binding way later after I finished the piecing and the quilting. So yes, this quilt is going to be entered into the Joy of Quilts show, and I'm just relieved that I have something to enter, because life has just been real busy. And that other quilt that I have, if you haven't seen it, check out the previous video. I mean, it's just a lot of little pieces. So, and there's another way right there for children. This particular quilt, I think it's called something in Lola, or Lloyd and Lola, by, I think it's Erica Hartman, something Hartman. And this does not quite fit on my son's bed. it's too small, but he really loves it. But the thing is that he always wanted to look at the llamas, and so he would get frustrated. He would open it up on the floor. He wanted to look at the llamas, and he was so happy to see the entire quilt up on the wall. And he wanted to like get under it, and I was like, no, you can't see it. If you take it down, he's like, okay. And so I've got 3 quilts hanging on walls with rods, and so that is one great way to fill up your wall space if you have a ton of wall space like I do. So next, we're actually in like the perfect spot because right in my son's teepee, and I know I have seen this so many times, almost every single day, quilters all around the world are putting quilts on the floor for babies, okay? So quilts as playmats are wonderful. This is usually the one that stays. It's like the permanent teepee quilt, and there is another little, like a non-stick mat that came with this teepee, and I just lay it underneath, and so he knows that that is his teepee quilt, and it stays flat. Sometimes he'll go and bring another quilt, and he'll bring it in there to cuddle, or he'll bring another blanket to cuddle, and he just likes to read books and invite me to read books to him inside the teepee. So quilts as playmats, probably layered like this, is a great choice. Moving right along to one of my favorite ways to display quilts as decor in the home is on the bed. And this particular quilt is not bed size. Maybe it could be for a twin. I'm not really quite sure. The bed size that I have right now is a king. And I have made a king-sized quilt by adding more borders to it, and it is beautiful. So I'll use that one. It's blue for a few months, and then I'll just take it off and put on a different comforter or something and drape a different quilt on top. And it's usually depending on seasons or holidays or just my mood overall. And I know that this is kind of Valentine's-y, maybe spring. If you don't pay attention too much to those little blossoms, it could be Christmas. But you know, I'm going with red right now, and it has lots of flowers, and I just so happen to love flowers. So if you have a quilt that you love, display it on your bed. And I will say that having a quilt on my bed has become a must because as a baby, my son, he used to sleep with something in his hands. And now he won't sleep with like the sheets or the blanket. He wants to sleep with mommy's quilt, and he wants to sleep with the corner in his hand. And so I think that just has something to do with, you know, maybe having those little teddy bears with like the mini blanket on it. I think they're called binkies, or I don't really remember what they're called, but he was always sleeping with like some little tiny thing. And now if I don't have a quilt on the bed, he will get me out of bed to go get him one so that he can hold on the corner, and he tells me, corner, corner. So yep, we've got to have a quilt on the bed, and my son loves the corners, but this is a great way to dress up your room with just a beautiful quilt. And depending on the quilt that you have, it will completely change the mood. So this one's very traditional, and so I just think that it's lovely, and it makes the room just warm. So yeah. Oh, and then you can see kind of what we were speaking to earlier, surface tops. I have little quilts that I put together on my nightstand, and I think that particular pattern, that heart, was from the Fat Quarter Shop, and then I just added around it to make it fit my nightstand. So, you know, on your dresser, all that good stuff, it'll look great. And last but certainly not least, design walls and design boards, just having quilts in progress up to showcase. And it's really wonderful when you have visitors and, you know, you have those family members or friends that are like, oh, I want a quilt, will you make me a quilt? And then they walk into your space and they're like, Oh, that's a lot of little pieces that are just open and not put together. And then you can be like, yeah, it takes like 10 to 80 hours usually to make one. And then it's just like give you and your visitors just a more appreciation for the craft and maybe even less likely to ask you to make them one. But this is a fantastic way to cheer up your space, provide you with that drive and motivation to keep you going and give you something to look forward to. So those are all of the 10 ways that I have going on in my home to display quilts. So you saw I have quilts just everywhere in my home, just about in every single room except for bathrooms. I have not gotten there yet, but I have seen quilts displayed in quilt shop bathrooms and in some of my friends' bathrooms, but I will get there, just watch. So I just want to recap real quick. 10 ways to display your quilts. Curtain rods, you can pin them to the wall. I just use like the normal little sewing pins. And you can change the pin head color if you want to like blend your pin head to your quilt so it's not as visible. Ladders, towel racks, sofas, recliners, your bed, nightstands, TV consoles, tables in general, and of course design walls. So if you have any other ways that you display quilts in your home, we'd all love to know. We're quilters here and of course we want to show them off. So drop a comment below and I can't wait to see you next time. Remember, if you enjoy my videos, please like and subscribe and I'll see you later. Bye!